Welcome to the Alain Elkann interviews, an unprecedented window into the minds of some of the most well-known and respected figures of the last 25 years.
India, how would you define yourself?
I have a simple sentence that describes me, and I say in a way which summarizes my life and who I am, is polyglotte and polychrome. Not that I speak so many languages, because in reality I don't, but because it summarizes my life, my education, and the way I work. Because I was born in Iran, from an Iranian father, an Egyptian English mother, and we moved to the United States when I was 1.5 years. I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts for 4 years, and then we moved to Germany.
So you have an Iranian father, Egyptian English mother.
Yes.
You moved to the States when you were?
1.5 years.
To Boston?
To Cambridge, Massachusetts.
And how long did you stay there?
4 years.
And then you went to Germany?
To Heidelberg. My father was an academic. He taught at Princeton in the United States. And then after we moved to the south of France, to Vence.
You are falling for...
No, I'm not today. I'm not even that, because Farsi I sort of don't speak that well. German I kind of forgot. But I think the structure of my mind is set for that. So I understand the structure of languages, of other languages. And I think more than anything, I know what it's like not to understand, to have to learn, to go towards another culture, to be a foreigner, to be receptive and maybe hospitalière to foreign cultures and to different cultures, let's put it.
Why polychrome?
Polychrome because my life is high in colors, I would say, and I use color as an expression. And I feel my life was high in colors.
You're very famous for your colors, but you became an architect. How and when?
I trained as an architect here in Paris at l'École des Beaux-Arts, but I never wanted to be an architect. I wanted to become a filmmaker.
Why didn't you?
I didn't because at the time there was only one school in Paris that offered that program to become a filmmaker, and it was a postgraduate degree. So I had to start with something else in any case. Everybody told you, there's 500, everybody applies, and there's only four places to be taken. For me, it was, so I decided I'm going to do like Fritz Lang. I'll start as an architect. I'll start eventually move my way through to film. And of course, that never happened.
And what happened?
What happened is that first of all, during my architecture studies, I would go to the movies sometimes up to 3 times a day. And I finished my studies of architecture, went to New York, and there I felt that architecture was not necessarily for me. And I studied graphic design, product design, and furniture design.
You studied at Parsons?
It was 1 semester, so it was Parsons, Cooper Union, and School of Visual Arts. It was like a trilogy of School of Visual Arts and Cooper Union.
And when did you start working?
When I came back to Paris, I returned to Paris, I started working with Christian Liègre. Christian Liègre is a French decorator, interior designer, very known for his brown and beige palette, which is the contrary of what I do. Brown and beige, very structured, a lot of wood, a bit the contrary of what I do. I started working with him, and I became his art director. And together we did projects like, I was more involved in his international projects, so I would do like a gallery house in Bangkok, and then I worked on his projects for Joseph in London, and then I did many different things, but the last project I worked on for him was the Mercer Hotel in New York.
Then you left?
Yeah, I resigned. I resigned because, for a very good reason.
After the Mercer?
The Mercer hadn't opened, and
So when did you start working for yourself?
I was pregnant, and when I got pregnant, I felt that suddenly you put your life in perspective, and you start asking yourself all these questions about your future, about your life, what you want to transmit to your baby, what kind of life do you want to live. There was all these questions coming to me, and I decided that what, as a mother, would I like to transmit as an example to my son or daughter. I ended up having a son, and suddenly I decided that that I would like to maybe try working on my own. It also came at a time where I was offered a whole bunch of other jobs at the same time. You know, it's not like, oh, I'm going to go on my own and then suddenly I'm going to wait for things. It happened all at the same time. People were saying, well, why don't I remember?
But why not cinema?
Because
why did
you can't just
renounce?
First of all, I haven't renounced. Okay, it's never too late. But you have to understand, you have a baby. So here I am with my baby. And suddenly you want to start a new life, but you're going to not only change your profession, but you're going to change your life. It's quite complicated. So, and you know, to start doing movies, you have to have the right connections.
Sorry to be indiscreet, but you didn't have a husband.
Yes, I did. Not anymore, but I did. He was a photographer. He is still a photographer. So then I started getting a whole bunch of jobs. I was offered to do apartments, homes. Joseph was one of the first one. Joseph in London was the very first person who trusted me and said, I would like you to do this for me. Please do my house in the south of France. And one thing going to another, you know, I started getting these big projects in London. You know, you meet one person who introduces to another and you start getting, and so I ended up having like 1,000 square meter home in London to design. And Joseph giving me his homes in the south of France in Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat. He offered me to design my very first small collection of furniture for him. Then here I was working on my own, and I had a friend working at Vogue, and she said, oh, well, I would like to do an article on you. I said, but I haven't done anything. No, she said, no, I'll do it, a small page in Vogue. And of course that attracted a lot more people, and I started working with, you know, Louis Vuitton. And that allowed me to find my space downstairs here, Rue Lascasse.
And you opened your space in Rue Lascasse?
Yeah, but it was my studio first downstairs. But then I had this, you know, I had a window, you know, I had just this space as you see it downstairs, but it was really my studio. As I was designing apartments.
At that time you worked with Diego, who was brown and beige, and that you were the opposite. And so at this time you start having your own style?
Okay, that's a good question, because you do. First of all, you have to know that when I was working at Christian, I was always trying to show colors.
Let me finish. Okay, you started to have your own style.
I didn't have my own style.
And what is your style?
No, I tell you, I know that color was my expression. I know that I was attracted to colors, right? Even with Christian, I was always trying to shove colors at him. You know, it's funny because at the beginning, when people come to see you, knowing that you had worked for Christian, they ask you for the same thing. They come to see you because they want the beige and the brown, but a younger version or a slightly cheaper version. You never know, you know? I mean, less expensive. And so that was a difficulty. That's very difficult, because how do you define your style? How do you find your style? And in fact, I was lucky enough to get projects that were completely, my very first project that I was given was a hotel in Miami. It was called Townhouse, and I had met Jonathan Moore in London, who's the owner, and we were sitting next to each other at dinner, and he thought, okay, I'm going to, you know, it's like one of those encounters. Yeah, he kind of said, I want you to do my apartment in New York, and then you have to come in, and maybe I'm going to do a hotel in Miami. And when he went back, he called me and said, okay, we're on this apartment at this hotel, and we're putting it together, and I want you to work on it. In the United States, it happens sort of like that.
American dream.
Yeah, it's sort of the American dream.
But on the basis of beige and brown.
On the basis of beige and brown. But he didn't see my work really. You know, he just believed. I think I hadn't done much, so he believed in me as a person more than really. I had the credit, of course, of who I was working with, And Joseph also was in London, Joseph, you have to understand, at that time was the king of good taste and being sort of, he was the king of many things. He was the king of fashion, the king of the cool. Really, he was the cool in London. And so when he kind of recommended someone, it meant a lot.
And when the color?
So then I go to Miami. And when I go to Miami, the Delano had just opened. And we have this so the property I'm supposed to redo is a
It's the Lan Hotel, right?
Yeah. The hotel that we are supposed to redesign, I'm supposed to redesign, is a 60-bedroom hotel. There's actually a very small budget and no property around the building. So there's no garden, no terrace, no nothing. You're there, you go walk up a few steps, there's a porch, and there it is, a 60-bedroom hotel. And it was an Art Deco building, so you can't touch much because it's all heritage. So you can't touch the terrazzo. It's all in that district where there's very little you're able to do. When I go to Miami, my feel is Miami is about sea, sex, and sun. At the time, I felt it was sea, sex, and sun, and I was thinking, how can I express that in what I'm going to do? So I thought I would do it through color. So I chose a palette of color which was red, baby blue, and beige. The red that fades in the sun that you like, c'est un bleu pâle, and beige, the beige of the sand. And I also added to that a very flowery fabric. I remember that was from Manuel Canovas, which gave it I wanted also to add, to give it a bit of a New England depth, to make it like homey New England. And it was quite interesting because that hotel didn't have any any garden and we couldn't do a swimming pool. I used the terrace, the top floor, which nobody would do in Miami. And because there was missing the water effect, I only put mattresses one next to the other with water beds. Basically, you know how water beds are quite tacky in the United States, but I covered them on red fabric. I put them on wooden bases, and I had huge umbrellas in red as well. So the whole terrace was completely red, and I put the beds next to each other, and I made huge L's, two big L's like this, L-shaped with the queen-size beds next to each other. So it's a big terrace, and so it's like kind of on wood. You'll see a photo of this. As a guest, you came on the terrace, you thought you were going to lie on a normal mattress, and then suddenly it was all water. That terrace was a huge hit in Miami. All the parties were happening on that terrace. And the whole hotel was a huge hit because it was the very first affordable but hip hotel. What happens to me afterwards is I start doing this, and there was a whole bunch of other ideas in that hotel that made it a very cool hotel to stay at. Like there was a breakfast, you had to go prepare your own breakfast on your own. You had a little kitchen, you'd go in like at home, and there was a big communal table, and you would sit and share breakfast. There was a Bond Street lounge below. Bond Street was a fantastic Japanese restaurant, and you'd have it downstairs. It was a great place.
And what happened afterward, after this success?
So that was interesting that Ian Schrager had heard of me. Ian Schrager is the one behind the Delano, the Royalton, all the Ian Schrager hotels that were done by Philip Stark. He's the man responsible for reinventing hotels in the United. He was with Steve Rubell. They created Studio 54. Had it not been for Ian Schrager and Philip Stark, both together, they were like a...
They reinvented the hotel style.
Yeah. So Ian Schrager comes to see me, and he says, I would like you to do this hotel in in San Francisco. Would you be interested? And I said, look, in San Francisco, I don't think it's a good idea because it's too far. I have a baby. I can't do this. No. So he gives it to Philip Stark, and he offers me to do this hotel in New York called the Empire, which I start working on, and so we go quite far with it. I'm just telling you all of this because it was a big deal, to be able, after Philip Stark, to, as a young woman designer starting to do this 400-bedroom hotel with Ian Schrager was a huge project. I started doing it, and then September 11 happened, and all the projects stopped. Yeah, everything stopped. Meantime, I had done in New York with Jonathan Moore another place called APT, which was a nightclub. That also, the whole place was in the Meat Market district, one of the very first to open, and it was like a Upper East Side apartment put in the Meat Market. And I designed it like a character that I invented called Bernard, and it was like his home. And so in the nightclub there was like a bed, a kitchen, open kitchen, a dining room, and it was no name, no nothing. So you had to know about the place. And when you entered, you had that the code, and you had to ask, is Bernard here? And they would say, no, he's traveling, so you can come in. And suddenly it became a super hip place also. And there was great music, and the food was only finger food. You could have like a little cheese platter, or it was quite very sophisticated. And I had designed a lot of the furniture. I still have like these tables. These tables I designed for APT. The stool, my bishop stool, this I designed for APT. And I designed that there was a bar downstairs, which was only a standing bar, so there were only stools. And I wanted to have stools that were quite graphic. So I designed these as a higher version.
And you started having many colors.
No, they were, in fact, in the beginning, they were only in wood and high-seated. So the club was like an Upper East Side apartment, so it was really quite classical and a lot of colors already. Mm-hmm. It was really interesting because there was one room that only had photographs of the life of this character Bernard that I invented. So I'd gone through the flea market of photography and found his house. I recreated his life. So it was like his apartment, but there was one room which is only photos of his life. So I recreated his life through photography that I found here and there in the flea markets, like his life. Bernard had been married for only 6 months, so he had a country house in France, and he had photos of his wife, he had photos of his dog, his grandfather.
But everything was fake.
Everything was fake, but it was real. So it was like a movie, basically. I was like, that's how I connected with the movies. Because I had sort of written this scenario and I was just following it. And it was a lot of fun for me to be able to put my two passions together in a way. I'm telling you all of this because in those first projects that I did in the United States, the one in Miami and in New York, both of them kind of had all the elements that defined me afterwards. All the elements that I wanted to work with. And that's how I was lucky enough to start working other places in Europe that helped me define my style. Because you were asking me earlier on, how did color come to you? And I was saying, because it was, I wasn't designing an apartment in Paris. I wasn't
define my style.
Yeah, I was able to, it gave me the opportunity to define what I wanted to say, how I could say it with my own palette.
How did you define yourself?
Well, I defined myself by the capacity of bringing, first of all, building stories within my projects. I knew I had the strength to do that. And then once you start building a story, it's much easier to bring the elements in, a bit like as if when you, in fashion design, for instance, when you design a collection, you always have a theme and then you work around the theme. And so suddenly, because you're building around something. So that was one way for me to do things. Of course, I had the architecture environment, which I always respond to. And I think that I try to respond in a very genuine way like that very first conversation you have with a client, and you try to understand what he's looking for and how you. So it's really an encounter that's very important. And then secondly, I think my work is a lot about joy. I like to bring joy. I believe that joy and the experience you can bring to somebody is very important. I think your surroundings has an influence and affects your mood.
Of course.
And I felt that I can reveal a certain joie de vivre, a certain joy, and I am able to do that. Well,
how did you do it?
How did I do it? Well, that's where I do it through the experience of space. For instance, inventing APT around a character, because it's a new experience. It's like taking an apartment, creating a character. All that was very new in a way.
What did you do after Bernard?
Then after Bernard, I was invited to do a hotel in Mexico City called Condesa. It's an area of Mexico City, Condesa.
That's another place, another style. Right?
That's another place, and I started, still I continued my color. I continued working with color because Mexico is a city where you can actually do this.
Which color?
It's interesting because you know how Mexico is all about. You have in mind Luis Barragan and all these bright colors. And I was given this small building in this area, which is a bit Condesa area, which is all these buildings from the 1920s, and I just felt these color palette could not work. So I went around taking photos of all the area, and suddenly I put together a color palette that belonged to that area. And you'll see the ground floor. It's really nice. It's like an interesting story. It's the bedroom. The hotel is a small hotel. It's 40 bedrooms, and we emptied the center of the whole building, and we created a new core. It was like an interior garden with shutters all around. Should I show you photos of this as we go along? Maybe it's easier for you. Hold on just 1 second.
Yes.
These are the colors.
Now India is coming back after this pause, and she comes back with a bunch of colors that are velvets.
That I designed for Pierre Frey. Okay.
Designed for Pierre Frey. These are materials, right? They're not for the walls.
No, but it's nearly the same.
The same.
So, for instance, there's
So
three.
what is special about this, or I mean at least yours, about these colors, which are very beautiful, by the way?
So,
You
basically,
mix...
basically you have more or less the same colors in each, but they're always a bit off. So there's three qualities. They're fine, medium, and bold, and they're like crayons. But in every quality, you don't have, the colors are slightly different. So, for instance, when you have this color and this color, they're not exactly the same.
Right?
So basically, when you put them together, they don't really match. They can be very close, but they're not the same. See what I mean?
But you try to put together similar colors.
Yeah, always. And they scream at each other. They're just not, they're slightly off. So for instance, I like putting, on one sofa, I could put this one and this one together, or this one and this one. They're not exactly the same.
For instance, you like to make sofas of different colors.
Yeah.
And what about the walls?
And then the walls, I do a different, I like when this and this work together because there's a bit of acidity, and so there's a tension. You see what I mean?
Yeah, but when you, for instance, you do a home, let's say a home or an apartment,
Yeah.
you try to have an harmony. I mean, you put one color for the house, or each room has a different color.
No, I don't work like that. I would work, for instance, say, a home is like a book. It's a whole rhythm. Okay, so it's not putting the same intensity on every page because it doesn't work. So what I try to do is I would try to give a certain number of rooms a different intensity. So I don't like doing a patchwork of different things. I do it more like a whole, and then maybe I'll give 1 or 2 rooms a different intensity, right?
But in other words, as you said, you had the red terrace in Miami, then you had red for Valentino, then you had pink in London. I mean, when you do an apartment, you decide a basic tone, or la durée, it's pale colors.
Homes are very different from public spaces. Homes are like portraits of people. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when I'm doing a home, I don't consider it as I work around the people who are going to live there. So whatever they say, I grab. I try to understand. I try to do like a portrait in 3 dimensions. Mm-hmm. All right. So I don't think in color the same way. I will work it up. I will start working with the space, and then put in some furniture, and then the materials, and then in the end I'll say, okay, let's give a bit more tension here, or unless I work with a complete material, I'll say, okay, this whole room will be in tiles, or this whole room will be in. You see what I mean?
Yes, but for instance, you make, I mean, a room has a floor.
Yeah, it has walls.
And has a roof.
A ceiling.
It's a 3 different things. How do you match them together?
For instance, the house I was doing here in the south of France, we first did the space. And now, after seeing all the space, I come in with my colors and I say, I would like this room to be this color, and then I build it up like that. Because I think...
But you make the ceiling the same color on the wall?
Sometimes I leave it white. Sometimes I leave the ceiling white and I do the walls one color. Sometimes I decide. Sometimes when you put the ceiling, when you paint the ceiling color, it brings it down. So it depends if you want to open it up, or if you want to, what kind of tension you want to have. If you want to have this, you paint the ceiling a color. If you want to have it open, you just leave the walls. You see what I mean? So it really depends.
But is it true? They say that one sleeps better in pale colors, or that, for instance, others say that dark colors make a better light. Is it true? I mean, did you study this?
I'm very good with my eyes. So, for instance, when a space is dark already, I kind of take it even darker, right? When it depends so much of the orientation of a room, of if it's what the view is. Sometimes you want to concentrate the view on the outside. Sometimes the view is not interesting, so you're better off giving a room a much more intense feel, because you're going to live in the room and not look outside. So it depends so much about that. And you have to be open to it. There's no in my little book that I wrote called Home, I gave a whole bunch of little rules like that. I'm saying, don't be scared to put big pieces of furniture in a small apartment, because it really gives it some kind of presence. Don't forget putting verticals also in a room, etc., etc. So I did give a whole bunch of rules like that, but I think rules are made to be broken, because once you make rules, then you follow the rules, it's not fun anymore. So I think that you have these principles and then you break them the whole time.
Would you say that in your quite long now experience of public spaces, hotels, nightclubs, shops, apartments and homes, is there a fil rouge that distinguishes India's work, or each work is different and there is no connection?
I think I've been able, and that's what I have wanted to do over all these years, is reinvent myself for every project, which I think I've managed to do in many ways. I don't want to be bored with myself. It's like repeating is easy. So I'm happy that I had many different projects that obliged me to reinvent myself. But people say from the outside that I have a very recognizable style, that people recognize my work in millions because it's very colorful, because it's stylized, because there's an element of dream. Maybe that's true.
You said something interesting, that in this gallery, in this restaurant gallery, what is the name in London?
Sketch.
It was done for 2 years. Now it lasts in 6. How long people can say the same thing? Aren't they tired after a while? Or how does it work? How do you construct your work? you do a house in the south of France, or you do a house in Milan or in Paris, how do you usually work? You consider this will be a house forever, this will be for a few years?
My work for houses is very different from the spaces I do. Public spaces. Okay, public spaces, I feel the places have to be whole, because, they have to be strong enough for people to move in them that still, and I like the fact that people can experience a place that has sufficient amount of interesting features so they know they're somewhere special, but it's not too powerful for them to forget who they are. Okay, so I like that.
In a public space.
In a public space. I think you always have to remain yourself, to be able to have that space that your mind can go elsewhere. You know that you're somewhere special, but you can still have your own imaginary. In private homes, I don't finish the spaces as much, because I think that should be always a space for the owners to add, to evolve, to buy more pieces, to continue,
So you mean the public space is a finished space,
finished,
right?
And they're held together.
And because it is a restaurant, that's the restaurant, right?
Mm.
And until they don't change it, it's the way it is, right? Mm. Instead a house is more mobile.
You're more mobile, and I won't go to the I think a space, a home, you should be able to change some of the furniture, you should be able to change the way you hung a painting, you should be able to have that flexibility unless it's specified otherwise, because you can also construct a house that is very put together and have it as a concept, but that's quite rare. In fact, to be able to do that. There's a tradition in the United States where when you design a house, you go all the way, you buy the art, you buy this. I feel that there should be a space for whoever lives in the house. They have to.
And what is your favorite room? Bedroom, salon, kitchen, bathroom?
No, I don't think like that. Mm-hmm. I never think like that. I think spaces are articulated one next to the other, and I think it's a whole that's interesting. It's a rhythm that's interesting. It's not saying, my favorite place is in a home. I always think the kitchen becomes a center place because it's very lived in. It's whatever happens. To design, I think, and what's interesting for me when I design spaces is the flow. Is how things work together. It's not designing a dressing room or it's putting the right spaces in the right way and having interesting volumes, interesting light, interesting.
There are some specific apartment houses, places that you consider topic for you, that you specifically loved more than others, or you are in love with each project? No,
private homes are very much related to who are living there, to the people who are living there.
So you're less free?
Yes, because it's what you're doing is it's like a photographer. When you take a portrait of somebody, you put the way you see them, but the result is about them and you together, and that's how I see really homes.
Otherwise, a landscape you do in a different way.
Landscape you do a very different way, but the result, for instance, the work I love the work I did with Maya, which is fantastic, and because the way she added the art and the layers and the furniture, etc., it's really, I think in the end it really works very nicely. And the house itself was very beautiful. So, I was also very interested in doing work in the desert in Egypt, working with mud and salt.
What did you do in Egypt?
In Siwa, I've been working quite a bit. And I've built homes there with mud and salt and in a very organic way, more like a sculpture way. And that was also, really interesting just because you push the materials to a different level.
And how many projects you can handle in the same time?
Between 5 and 10, depending on what scale they are. But sometimes it's furniture projects, sometimes it's homes. I only do 2 at a time, not more. But I don't do more than 2 homes at a time. And other projects I do, like right now, I'm working on a restaurant in Miami. We have the 2 homes. I'm doing a scenography of Bonnard in Australia, in Melbourne. So that's a big exhibition, and then I have all my collections. I don't know if you've seen my showroom downstairs.
So you are selling your own furniture
Yeah.
to other designers eventually, or to private people?
To private people. In fact, every time I design a project, I design furniture for that project. And then within that selection of things that I've designed, I decide, well, this can have another life. And if I decide it has another life, I edit that furniture for the projects and it goes in my showroom. And then I put everything together like that. So more or less, what you see in my showroom is the pieces of furniture I've designed for the past maybe 10 years.
And you repeat them?
I repeat them. Like, for instance, this sofa was designed for a house in London.
And what is your favorite? You like sofas, stools, tables, libraries? What do you...
Well, that's also...
light, lamps? Or...
What I like designing, I feel there's two things there's materials that I like that inspire me. So, for instance, I love working with ceramic. These tools are in ceramic, the bishops. I like working with rattan, so I've done a whole bunch of furniture in rattan. And also, I have a specific love for fabric, for textile, for upholstery. And I love working with that. I like making things with that. Then I also have a special, if you go to my little space over there, you'll realize that every object came from a know-how, craftsmanship. So all the objects that are made over there are made in a country with a specific know-how. So, for instance, the trays are made with lacquer in Vietnam. This technique comes from India. There's some little basket work that are made from Mexico. So it's a whole bunch of things that are put together that are made in very small quantities, very small productions, and normally you cannot find them elsewhere. My lamps are made in Bohemia, are blown glass from Bohemia. There's a whole bunch of things that you can see.
So you like layers?
I like layers.
You like colors?
Yeah, I like mixing everything together.
You like mixing, but not too much.
So it depends. Sometimes
Depends.
It's like when you invite friends for dinner. If you have only the same type of friends, it becomes boring. So, but then you start putting people coming from all around the world. You say, oh, it's cool. And then you start putting also younger crowds and older crowds, and then it becomes really fantastic because I like mixing everything together within also the language of my furniture.
Well, that's what you started to say at the beginning, right?
Yes.
You are polyglot and polychrome,
Exactly.
right?
That's how I feel.
And poly people.
And poly people and poly... and I like mixing things. For instance, I've designed a collection for Monoprix. You know Monoprix?
Yes.
Yeah.
Collection of what?
About everything. They gave me carte blanche. So I already did once. For instance, what you see here, these tables, they're from Monoprix.
They're very cheap.
They're very cheap, very
Let's say
accessible.
non very expensive.
Yeah.
So in your work, there are very expensive things and less expensive
Exactly,
things.
and so now I'm redoing a whole collection for them of like this is part of the collection of the Monoprix that's coming out in May.
And is Paris a very inspiring place for you? I mean, or is just by chance?
Look, Paris functions for me because first of all, I think the quality of life in Paris is very nice. It's a country of there's fantastic exhibitions. It's a center of Europe. You can go everywhere. It's a center. It's become a center for me, and from where I can move very easily also. France still has a great quality of craftsmanship, of creative people, of know-hows that you can still work with. Now I just bought a home in Arles, so I go down there quite often, and then I travel quite a bit. So you find your inspiration. Your inspiration can be everywhere as long as you see it.
Arles it used to inspire Christian Lacroix, who had a lot of colors, right?
Yeah, because he was born there, Christian Lacroix. But So I'm happy to. I found this great house which I'm working on right now. So it's
You like to work in any kind of house, modern, old, building, right?
yeah.
And what about your dream of shooting a film?
I will do.
When?
They just have to take a bit of time. I think that I will do one.
It's a fiction film.
Yeah, a fiction, slightly autobiographic in a way, but a bit fiction.
And it's not yet.
No, because it's very difficult for me to do what I'm doing now and to have space in my
You
mind.
will stop your work and then do
I think I would do it that way yeah.
You think you will one day stop?
I will not stop working ever.
No, but stop doing this job of decorating.
I would like to take a parenthèse, be able to say I need to take some time off to do something else and then come back to it.
Your character will be, what was his name, Bernard? You're inventing a new Bernard.
I would invent a character or... Yeah.
But when you do a home or a place, you always invent a character.
No, when I do a home, the characters are right there, so I
Look at the character.
Yeah, I have characters.
And when you do a public place?
And when I have a public place, I often say, who should be going there? Who would be the ideal? Sometimes I think of my friends to say, okay,
Would they like that or not?
I will design so-and-so should be going there. I take a few of my friends and I want everybody to feel good. So what would he like? What would she like? But often you tell a story also from, just like I did for La Durée, it's about Marie Antoinette.
Marie Antoinette.
Yeah.
So you reinvent in Japan, Marie Antoinette, or in California, or in Switzerland.
Exactly.
Very different place, very different Marie Antoinettes.
Exactly.
For different kind of people.
Yeah.
So you don't believe in that people are all the same, places are all the same. Everything is different.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite color?
But I don't have a favorite color. I don't have any discrimination with colors. I like them all. It's like how you mix them. For instance, if you tell me mix yellow and black, I hate that combination. But if you tell me, do you like yellow? I love yellow. Do you like black? I love black, right? So I like colors that, that are a bit off. For instance, it could be this and this together, They scream it. They're aggressive with each other. That's how I think
And
that...
what about beige and brown, who was your beginning? You still have feelings, or you cancelled beige and brown?
Beige and brown work well when you put strong colors next to them.
And how come your house is white?
Here,
Yeah.
this is not my house.
And this is your office.
This is my studio.
And the studio is white.
Yes, it's white because I need neutrality to be able to function. Like if I had one color, it would reflect on everything I do.
So you will have it's like not having a landscape.
It's like, no, there is a landscape here. But for instance, when I work with colors, I cannot dress in colors too much myself because I need to be in a neutral mode. So you'll often see me dressed in non-colors or dark blues or blacks or, non-colors. Maybe I'll have something strong on me, but I need to have that neutrality to be able to project with colors. So I don't want to have like a red space. I need to remote myself from that.
And how is your bedroom? What color?
My bedroom has a lot of yellow in it. Very strong yellow carpet and a very strong yellow blanket.
And how is the wall?
They're all, first of all, they're all cracking. It's all falling apart. And I was thinking of repainting it pink.
Pink?
Yeah, I wanted to have pink in my bedroom, and I wanted to have a pink that's quite... that's a bit stronger than this one. This is too pinky.
And what about your living room?
My living room is kind of off-white. My whole home doesn't have colors on the wall.
And do you like curtains?
I like curtains, yeah.
Colored curtains?
I love color.
And what about your kitchen?
My kitchen is a small kitchen. It's very dense. I have an orange velvet screen in my kitchen, and then I have a very yellow table, and I have curtains in my kitchen. And kitchens and bathrooms, I do like main rooms. So they always.
What about your bathroom?
And my bathroom is white, but I have a carpet on the floor, and I have wooden floor, and I have a big mirror. And
You like wooden floors?
if they're there, I like them. If they're not there, I'm not sure I would choose that as my first choice.
You had to make an ideal floor.
I would use tile. Yeah, I would compose it with tiles.
Also in the salon.
Maybe, yeah. I like having hard floors and rugs on it. I like that.
And you do your own rugs, or?
Yeah, I design my own rugs.
And who is doing them?
So I did a collection with Cogolin, La Manufacture de Cogolin.
Yes, very famous.
Yeah. And I did a collection with Golran in Milano. So I show you the collection of my rugs. They're I think they're quite nice.
You want rugs?
This is Golran, yeah, in Milano.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just go, oops, wait.
Oh, sorry.
Here are the
No, I see. These are not moquettes, they are carpets,
These
right?
are carpets.
Okay.
Bello.
See?
I love it.
Okay, India, thank you very much for this conversation.
Alain Elkann interviews.